It all began to unravel after graduation. Kian's fiancée, Serafina, suddenly announced she wanted to stay and work at the university. The declaration was so out of character that a cold suspicion immediately took root in Kian's mind. Right then, he knew it had something to do with her advisor. They had a conversation about it, one of those brutally honest talks that can either save a relationship or shatter it completely. Kian laid out the options as he saw them. Either they call off the engagement, or she had to ensure her advisor was reassigned to a different department. She didn't give him an answer right away. Instead, she vanished for an entire night, returning the next morning with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of a sleepless, agonizing decision. She looked at him, her expression grim, and said only one thing: the engagement is still on. On the day of their engagement party, the grand ballroom was filled with the soft murmur of conversations and the clinking of champagne flutes. Kian stood beside Serafina, the warmth of the spotlights feeling like a promise of their bright future. Just as she was about to slide the engagement ring onto Kian's finger, the heavy oak doors of the hall burst open. A woman Kian had never seen before stood there, holding a baby wrapped in a pale blue blanket. Her voice cut through the celebratory atmosphere like a shard of glass. "Serafina, are you really leaving me and the baby?" Serafina's fingers, which had been moments from placing the ring on Kian's hand, instinctively curled back, her knuckles white. Kian grabbed her wrist, his grip firm, and leaned in to whisper a warning in her ear. "If you walk out of here, this isn't over." Her eyes were fixed on the diamond ring, a conflict raging within them. For a heart-stopping second, Kian thought she would choose him, that she would complete the ceremony. But just as she moved to put it on, the baby in the woman's arms began to wail, a sharp, piercing cry that seemed to seal their fate. Serafina pulled her hand away, murmured a hasty apology to the stunned crowd, and walked away without a single glance back in Kian's direction. "Kian, you decide what to do," Kian's father said, his voice a low, steady presence beside him. "No matter what, the family's got your back." He shot a piercing look towards Serafina's parents, who were frozen in a state of mortified shock. The whispers started almost immediately. "Can't judge a book by its cover. People are so unpredictable. I always thought it was strange how Serafina disappeared for half a year. Turns out she was off having a kid with another guy. Is this how the Reynoldses raise their children? If she were my daughter, she'd get a real beating for this." Kian just stood there, stunned. The words washed over him, but none of it felt real. Serafina's dream, or so she had always told him, was to become a well-known singer. That's why her sudden announcement about wanting to work at the university had been such a red flag. Kian knew in that moment that she must have fallen for her advisor. Kian's best friend, Javier, had laughed at him, telling him Kian was being overly sensitive. "Staying at the university is normal, isn't it? It's a stable job with summer and winter breaks," he'd said. Kian smirked to himself at the memory because Javier didn't know the full extent of the Sterling family's background. For her 21st birthday, Serafina's gift from Kian's family was a significant share of the Olympus Corporation's profits. With her financial situation, she could do anything she wanted. There was no conceivable reason she would ever want a 9-to-5 job at a university. The only real point of contention between them had always been their future plans. Kian was destined to inherit the family business, which required him to study abroad for a few years to gain the necessary experience. Serafina, on the other hand, had no concrete goals. She just wanted to have fun and live freely. Kian never had a problem with that. If she didn't want to study abroad with him, he wasn't going to force her. He vividly remembers the day he decided to go. She hugged him tightly, her voice soft as she comforted him. "I don't want to live a life where I can see the end from the beginning," she'd said. "What if I really become a star? You'll be the pop star's husband. Then I'll come visit you overseas. Isn't that more thrilling?" Kian was convinced by her vision of a more exciting future, so he left the country. She stayed behind for her freedom and her supposed dreams. Both of their families had suggested they get engaged before Kian left, but he resisted the pressure back then. Kian's thinking was, let her chase her dreams. Marriage shouldn't be a restraint. He never imagined that her freedom would include having a child with another man. All those times Kian thought she was too busy with performances to visit him, she was actually pregnant with Dr. Ashton's child. In hindsight, all the signs were there. Kian had just chosen to ignore them. At least now the truth is out, Javier said, his voice laced with sympathy as he looked at Kian. We don't have to keep guessing. He tried to lighten the mood. Bro, the next one will be better. His comment made Kian chuckle, a hollow, humorless sound. But in the next second, a tear Kian hadn't realized was forming hit the back of his hand. Kian lifted his head, using his palm to cover his eyes as he heard a deep sigh from nearby. Kian's parents were seeing the last of the guests out. The once grand ballroom now felt cavernous and empty, with fewer than 10 of them remaining. That's when Serafina's parents finally approached Kian. Kian, you're a good kid, Serafina's mother began, her face etched with shame. We're so sorry for what happened today. This is Serafina's fault, and it's our fault for not managing our daughter better. Who would have thought she'd get involved with her professor? Don't worry, we'll handle this. Kian interrupted her before she could continue. There's no need, Mrs. Reynolds. He's still your grandson, after all. This is your family's issue, and my family shouldn't get involved. Kian made it clear he wanted them to leave. It's been a long day, so I won't see you out. Serafina's parents looked deeply uncomfortable but couldn't find the words to respond. Before leaving, her father made one last desperate attempt. Kian, I'll offer you 30% of our shares if you'll give the child a name. We can treat it as an adoption, and our families can bury this whole scandal. Kian let out a short, incredulous laugh. Why would the Sterling family risk their reputation for your scandal? Serafina's father's face turned an awkward shade of red with embarrassment. Seeing Kian's firm stance, they finally left, their shoulders slumped in dejection. Kian didn't expect to see them again so soon, but there they were at a college reunion a few weeks later. Serafina and Dr. Ashton stood confidently in the middle of the room, basking in a sea of praises and congratulations from their former classmates. Serafina is really the Reynolds' second daughter, isn't she? Kept that a secret too well, one classmate chimed in. Just out for some life experience and got caught up in this, another added. Professor, you two already have a child. You should have invited us to the wedding sooner. Dr. Ashton nodded politely to the crowd. You all know Serafina's special status. This is just a casual get-together, our treat, he announced, which ignited a round of cheers. Serafina remained by his side, gently patting her baby, her face glowing with the bliss of a new mother. Kian felt a cold anger creeping through him as he clenched his fists. To accept blessings so publicly felt like a deliberate slap in his face. The entire scene felt utterly absurd. Just yesterday, she was nearly Kian's fiancée, and now she was standing here with another man's child, soaking in the approval of their peers. Javier was even angrier than Kian was. He grabbed a drink and strode toward them, his voice dripping with sarcasm. When did Dr. Ashton and Serafina get married and have a child? He asked, emphasizing each word heavily. Dr. Ashton's face immediately fell as everyone's attention shifted to Javier. Then Javier dropped the bombshell. Did you all know that Serafina has been engaged this entire time? Tell me, Professor, as an educator, do you get some kind of thrill from being the other man? It was like a bomb going off in the room. All eyes were now on Dr. Ashton. Those who had just been congratulating him took a noticeable step back, grouping together to whisper amongst themselves. Serafina suddenly stepped in front of Dr. Ashton, shielding him from the prying eyes. Before you know the truth, I'd advise you to hold your tongue and avoid making trouble for yourself, she warned Javier. Completely unfazed, she then shot a fierce look in Kian's direction before addressing the room. Since we're all here, I might as well state it clearly. Yes, Kian and I were engaged, but it was an arrangement made by our families. It doesn't reflect my personal wishes. As an independent individual, I believe I have the right to pursue love. Some people still act like we're living in the past when arranged marriages were the norm. I'm not letting anyone chain my life down with marriage. Serafina lifted her chin, exuding a misplaced confidence, and a few of their classmates looked almost ready to cheer for her supposed bravery. Kian couldn't believe she was trying to shift the blame onto him, painting him as some oppressive figure from a bygone era. She thought Kian would still be the fiancé who would tolerate anything for her sake. Kian let out a cold chuckle and stepped forward. So you're saying you never agreed to the engagement? Why didn't you refuse earlier? How many benefits has your family received from mine because of this arrangement? You're not a child, Serafina. You had countless opportunities to tell me before our engagement banquet, yet you chose not to. Don't act so high and mighty. You're disgusting. Serafina stayed silent, her expression ugly. Dr. Ashton jumped in to defend her. Kian, it's not like that. Serafina wanted to tell you earlier, but you were preparing to go abroad. She didn't want to mess things up for you. She planned to explain everything when you got back. She was scared you'd be mad, but she did have feelings for you. Keeping it from you was for your own sake, he said, his tone self-righteous. Their excuses made Kian sick. Javier couldn't help himself. Are you saying Kian should just bow down and thank you cheaters? He snapped. Shut up. Serafina fumed. Dr. Ashton and I never did anything while I was in school, she protested. Javier scoffed. So what? You can't change the fact that you were his student. Serafina looked at Kian but offered no further explanation. She just grabbed Dr. Ashton's arm and left. Dr. Ashton had been Kian's class teacher when Serafina decided to switch to Kian's major. She was transferred into their class. Kian had noticed her visiting his office frequently and asked her about it once. She just laughed and clung to Kian's arm, saying she wanted to spend more time near him and was just making up for missed classes. Getting jealous over nothing, she had teased. Do you really think I'm cheating on you? Kian frowned. Serafina, I'm a guy too. The way he looks at you isn't right. She brushed it off, accusing Kian of being overly possessive. Back then, Kian couldn't tell if it was his own jealousy or a genuine intuition, so he dropped the subject. Looking back now, it's painfully clear that he had feelings for her all along. He just couldn't make the first move because of his position. For Serafina to take such a risk, to go behind Kian's back and have a child with him, was truly something else. That night, Kian packed up everything in his house that was related to Serafina. He considered what to do with the expensive gifts he'd given her and ended up sending them all back to her family home. Kian didn't expect her mother to show up at his door a day later, gifts in tow. Kian, Serafina put her heart into choosing these for you. Don't they show how much she cared? She pleaded. Everyone makes mistakes, especially when they're young. Isn't it normal to date around a bit before marriage? For the sake of our family's long-standing ties, please think this over. And what your uncle said the other day still stands. What do you think? Kian forced a smile. Mrs. Reynolds, would Mr. Reynolds have married you if you'd had a child with another man right before your wedding? Dating is normal, yes, but from the day we set our engagement, I stayed away from other girls. I didn't want to hurt anyone. As her mother was pleading with Kian, Serafina herself stepped out from behind her. She confronted Kian directly. But you never asked me why I did it, why I chose that path. Kian, would you believe me if I said I felt trapped? Are you really okay with severing our ties just like this? Doesn't it hurt me too? Kian listened calmly to everything she said, his face a placid mask. Serafina, this is Kian giving us a dignified end, he replied. She broke down, shouting, I don't want dignity. I want a husband who truly loves me. I want to marry a real person, not some heartless corporate heir. Kian's heart twisted at her words. So this was how she saw him. Sure, love isn't everything in life, but Kian had given her all the love he could. Silence filled the air, and Kian sure everyone thought he was unbothered by her outburst. But Kian's father, standing on the second-floor landing, saw Kian's hands shaking. He flew down the stairs and slapped Serafina hard across the face. How could the Reynoldses raise such a heartless brat? He shouted. Instinctively, Serafina shoved him. No one's ever hit me before, she yelled. Kian quickly rushed to steady his father, shocked by her reaction. His father's hand was still trembling as Serafina, her voice hoarse, lashed out again. If you hadn't made Kian so rigid with all your rules, we wouldn't be in this mess. It's all your fault. Shut up, Kian roared. Serafina, you have no right to criticize my father. Get out of my house. After she finally left, an overwhelming exhaustion swept through Kian. Kian's father hadn't recovered from the shock of it all. He just stared blankly at Kian, wanting to say something, but then he simply lowered his head and went back upstairs. Kian didn't know how to comfort him. After revealing her true feelings, Serafina became more openly affectionate towards Dr. Ashton. Not only did she get the child registered under the Reynolds family name, but she also used her family's connections to get Dr. Ashton a more respectable job. On his birthday, she booked a table at the most exclusive Harto Jacinto restaurant in the city and posted a picture of them together. Everyone in their social circle knew about it instantly. Friends sent Kian screenshots of her post. Kian, are you just going to let this slide? You're seriously going to put up with this? Kian didn't reply. Kian just quietly opened the post and saw a flood of comments. Most were mocking and sarcastic. Serafina, you're amazing. You actually bagged your own teacher. If you didn't want to marry Kian, you should have just said so. Why waste his time? Kian is my ideal man. You can play around with a guy like that, but isn't it embarrassing to bring him out in public? Kian was scrolling through the comments when he saw one that had been pinned to the top. It was from Serafina. Background doesn't determine a person's ability, and Ashton is the love of my life. Disrespecting him is disrespecting me. And just like that, all the mocking comments vanished. Kian's gaze turned colder. Serafina was making a public statement for Dr. Ashton while openly slapping Kian in the face. What Kian didn't expect was that this wasn't even the worst of her actions. Because of Serafina's last stunt, Kian's father hadn't been sleeping well for days. Today, he couldn't even get out of bed. Kian was terrified and quickly called for an ambulance. The best treatment for his condition was at the hospital owned by the Reynolds family. With his hands shaking, Kian dialed Serafina's number, hoping she would at least arrange for a doctor. She hung up on Kian 3 times. Having no other choice, Kian rushed his father to their hospital himself, but they couldn't even get into the emergency room. A nervous nurse kept apologizing. "Mr. Sterling, there's no room. All the doctors are busy. If you wait, I'm afraid it'll be too late." Of course Kian knew that, but at that moment, Kian had no better option. Kian kept pleading with the nurse. "The Reynolds Hospital has my..." Kian was about to say that Kian held shares in the hospital, but before Kian could finish, Serafina's loud voice cut him off. "No one can break hospital rules today, not even you, Kian. Didn't you cut ties with the Reynoldses? Does it still matter who you are?" She stood there, blocking the way. "I can overlook what happened and arrange a room and a doctor, but he must apologize." She pointed at Kian's father, who was slumped over in Kian's arms. Her eyes were filled with resentment. Because of that one slap, she was holding a grudge against the man who had cared for her for years. Kian's heart went ice cold. A stroke is no small thing, and Kian didn't dare delay any longer. Kian had to give in a little. "Serafina, how about I apologize to you? Just think of all the years my dad cared for you." "No way," she spat. "He slapped me, and he humiliated Ashton. Not making him kneel is already showing mercy." She blocked the hallway completely, unconcerned with the stares of the people around Kian, insistent that Kian's father apologize. The crowd grew larger. Just when everyone thought Kian's father would be forced to apologize, the sound of sirens echoed from outside. 5 or 6 doctors from the best private hospital in North City rushed in and bowed to Kian, efficiently taking over. Before getting into the new ambulance, Kian glanced back at a stunned Serafina and dialed a number on his phone. "Pull the plug on all projects with Reynolds Holdings," Kian said into the phone. "In 1 month, I don't want to see them as a profitable company." The color drained from Serafina's face. She watched as the professionally trained private hospital team took charge with swift efficiency. She wanted to say something, but one look from Kian silenced her. There was no warmth left in Kian's gaze, only a chilling coldness. The murmurs from the crowd, their eyes shifting to Serafina, were complex and hard to read. She felt her face burn, not from the memory of the slap, but from Kian's last words, which stabbed at her pride like an icy dagger. "Kian, how dare you?" she yelled at the now empty doorway. Her voice, however, carried a faint tremor. She clenched her fist, nails digging into her palm, and took out her phone to send Kian a message. "What right do you have to speak to the Reynoldses in that tone? Who do you think you are?" Kian saw the message right after getting his father settled into the surgery room. A flash of anger crossed Kian's eyes. "Who am I? What right do I have? Serafina, you'll find out soon enough." Kian didn't reply. Kian just sat there anxiously, watching the light above the surgery room door. Serafina stood in the hospital's lobby, a wave of fear crashing over her after her anger faded. Dr. Ashton appeared at her side at some point, his face lined with concern and a hint of tension. "Don't worry, Kian's just angry. He won't actually do it." He had, of course, heard Kian's words about pulling out of the Reynolds Holdings projects, so he rushed to comfort her. Serafina grabbed his hand, trying to suppress her trembling. "Yeah, Kian just got back from studying abroad. He doesn't have that kind of pull in the company. I was just overthinking because I care too much." Serafina snapped back to reality, forcing down the rising panic and trying to maintain the dignity of a Miss Reynolds. She took a deep breath and forced a smile for Dr. Ashton. It's no big deal. What can he stir up? The Reynoldses won't back down. Let's go see the baby. The nurse said he woke up and was looking for you. She gripped Dr. Ashton's hand, seeking his warmth to dispel the chill creeping inside her. But his hand was a bit cool too. He looked back in the direction the ambulance had disappeared, his eyes unreadable behind his glasses. At the hospital, the surgery light finally went out. Kian rushed forward. The doctor gave Kian a reassuring look. Your father had a sudden outburst. The strong emotions triggered a vascular spasm in his brain. Luckily, you brought him here in time, and it didn't lead to a major stroke. The doctor paused, glanced at Kian, and then continued. But there are noticeable after-effects. His muscle strength on his left side is reduced, and his speech is temporarily affected. He's going to need a lot of rehab. Also, he must stay calm, no more stress. Kian listened in silence, frowning hard. Kian gently held his father's limp hand, feeling its cold softness. Dad, don't worry, Kian thought. There won't be a next time. Those who wronged you won't get away with it. By the time Kian had everything sorted out, it was late at night. Kian's phone had buzzed with a dozen messages. Their mutual friends told Kian that Serafina and Dr. Ashton had gone viral. It turned out someone had filmed them comforting each other in the hospital lobby. The poster, a blogger with a knack for capturing dramatic hospital scenes and a modest following, had spun it into a captivating tale. It blew up fast. People recognized Dr. Ashton. Some even sent anonymous tips to the blogger, saying he was once a college professor and Serafina was his student. Once outed online, they readily admitted to their romance saga, which surprisingly earned them a fair bit of goodwill. Dr. Ashton's old academic papers resurfaced online, and people started calling him a breath of fresh air, a true scholar. Kian couldn't help but scoff, gripping his phone tightly. Serafina's recklessness, Dr. Ashton's cowardly facade, and her parents' greedy shamelessness were like suffocating vines wrapped around Kian. Dignity. Kian had offered them dignity, but they tore it apart and tried to fling the pieces back in Kian's face, humiliating Kian and hurting Kian's family. Let them enjoy it while they can, because days like these won't last. In just 3 days, 10 deals integral to the Reynolds family's business were abruptly terminated. The reasons given were quite varied, citing mismanagement, leadership misconduct, and significant operational risks and trust issues. These cancellations meant Reynolds Holdings lost millions in orders and future profits. Far worse, it shook their market status and their standing in the value chain. Their stock plummeted. Serafina's mother's phone rang off the hook with demanding partners, panicked shareholders, and rivals who were reveling in their misery. Cornered, she tried calling Kian but never got through. So she came to Olympus Corporation's headquarters to see Kian's father, only to be politely blocked by the secretary downstairs. Mr. Sterling is fully booked and not seeing anyone. For the first time in her life, Serafina's mother found herself pleading with the secretary. Please, just let me speak with him, even just on the phone. It's really urgent. If you refuse, I'll jump, she threatened, pointing to the window on the 30th floor. The secretary couldn't hold her off any longer and dialed the inside line to explain, but with Kian's father hospitalized because of her daughter's actions, Kian wasn't about to let the Reynoldses off the hook. When the call connected, Kian's father didn't let Serafina's mother say a single word. He just said coldly, Kian is the current president of the group. His decision is Olympus Corporation's decision, and then hung up. Serafina's mother was at a complete loss. She had assumed Kian's father was behind it all, but didn't realize that the Reynolds' downfall was entirely Kian's doing. Furious, her vision blurring with rage, she finally understood that this time the Sterlings were all in to break ties. Her rage turned on Serafina. Storming into her apartment, she confronted her daughter. Look at what you've caused. All of this for a man who's beneath you. You even stopped the chairman from getting medical treatment. Serafina, what is wrong with you? Don't you get it? The Sterlings were our biggest ally. Now look, they've struck back, and the Reynoldses are doomed. Are you happy now? Serafina, dodging her mother's furious gaze, glanced at Dr. Ashton, who was trying to distract the baby on the couch. She attempted to defend herself. Mom, Kian's dad hit me first. They pushed us too far. Why should we have to depend on them? We can't. Her mother's slap hit hard, far harder than Kian's father's had. Serafina's cheeks swelled instantly, her ear buzzing. She had never seen this side of her mother before and broke down in tears. But her mom wasn't finished. You. What do you have without the Reynoldses? Who are you, Serafina? How long can your little dividend support that precious man and child of yours? Ashton's current job is thanks to our family's connections. Wake up, Serafina. Apologize to Kian, beg him, drop that worthless pride of yours, or get ready to become a street beggar. Serafina froze, her entire body cold. Her mother's fury tore apart the idyllic fantasy she had been weaving with love and freedom. She had thought her status allowed her to balance between love and material wealth, enjoying genuine emotions from Dr. Ashton without giving up her comforts. She had even seen Kian's sense of duty and family responsibility as shackles. But now reality hit her hard. Without the Reynolds family's protection, her carefully crafted love utopia was nothing but a sandcastle. Watching Dr. Ashton, her feelings were a tangled mess of emotions. He was holding the baby, avoiding her gaze, and spoke softly. Serafina, your aunt was also anxious. Things are really bad now. Are you scared? Afraid of living a rough life with me? No. How could I be? Dr. Ashton immediately denied it, his tone a bit too urgent, which only made it feel weak. I'm just worried about you and the baby and the Reynoldses. After all what? Serafina pressed, the tension inside her growing tighter. After all, Kian seems to be really serious this time. Dr. Ashton's voice dropped. Serafina's heart sank to rock bottom. She finally realized it. The person who once adored her and couldn't bear to say a harsh word to her had now become the judge, holding a deadly verdict over her entire family, ready to bring it down at any moment. And this was just the appetizer. First, the tax department launched a surprise audit of the Reynolds' books. Then the environmental department inspected their factory, issuing hefty fines and ordering a shutdown. Companies that had once been dependent on the Reynoldses began to quietly distance themselves, some even sabotaging them in secret. The Reynoldses couldn't hold on for much longer. Serafina's mother was so worried her hair started turning white. She sought help everywhere, only to find that their once warm friends either avoided them or outright said they couldn't help. The Reynolds family's cash flow was on the verge of breaking. Their entire world was teetering on the edge of collapse. Serafina's life turned upside down. The glory of the Reynolds name she once prided herself on quickly faded. They couldn't afford their luxury apartment anymore. The high-end shops she frequented no longer welcomed her. She had to sell all her personal properties. Dr. Ashton wasn't having it any easier. He had gotten into a top research institute through the Reynolds' connections, but now gossip about him cheating, being involved in a teacher-student affair, and getting a student pregnant spread like wildfire. He tried hard to prove himself professionally, but his reports were suppressed, and his experimental rights were revoked. The admiring gazes he once received turned into blatant mockery and pity. Serafina couldn't handle it anymore. She and Dr. Ashton argued more and more frequently. She blamed him for being incompetent, for not being able to protect her and the child. He resented her for being too headstrong and lacking restraint, blaming her for the mess they were in. During one particularly heated argument, Serafina lost control and shouted, pointing at the child in Dr. Ashton's arms, "It's all because of you. If it weren't for you back then." Dr. Ashton sharply interrupted, his face turning pale. "Are you insane? This is your child." Serafina was taken aback by the words that had slipped out. She crouched down, weeping silently. "What can I do?" she sobbed. "The Sterlings are trying to kill us. My mom scolds me every day. Everyone is laughing at us. Ashton, I feel so helpless. What can we do?" A week later, an even bigger storm arrived. Dr. Ashton was officially reported for academic fraud, and a formal investigation was launched. His world completely collapsed. He locked himself in the shabby little apartment Serafina had managed to rent, keeping the curtains drawn day and night. He knew the consequences of confirmed fraud all too well. Public disgrace, a shattered future, maybe even jail time. "It's him. It has to be Kian. He's doing this to destroy us," he raved. Serafina looked at the man descending into madness in front of her, her heart filled with a mixture of disgust and fear. "Who are you blaming now? Why didn't you speak up when you were doing those things?" she asked. She looked around at the rundown apartment, the smell of cheap takeout hanging in the air. Over their parents' argument, The baby cried loudly. Outside, reporters were waiting. On the small television, the news of the Reynolds family going bankrupt was scrolling across the bottom of the screen. "It's over," Serafina whispered, slumping to the floor, her eyes empty. "It's all over." After that, Serafina tried countless times to find Kian. She even knelt outside the company building for 3 days straight, repeatedly smacking herself in the face. She didn't care about face or reputation anymore. She just wished she could turn back the clock. But there's no medicine for regret in this world. Reynolds' holdings crumbled to the ground. Professor Davies was arrested. She was left to raise the child alone, unable to afford even the cheapest apartment. The last Kian heard of her, someone saw her by the seaside, holding her child and staring blankly out at the water. Kian's assistant asked if Kian wanted to send someone to check on her. Kian just shook his head. "Everyone chooses their own path. I wouldn't interfere with Serafina's life anymore. Our paths would never cross again." Today, the hospital called to say Kian's father had fully recovered. Kian went to a flower shop to prepare a bouquet to go pick him up. As Kian walked in, Kian spotted a beautiful bouquet at the same time as another woman. Before Kian could say anything, she quickly drew her hand back with a smile. "If you like it, you can have it," she said. To ease the slight awkwardness, Kian joked, "Are you giving that to your boyfriend?" She shook her head, a sad smile touching her lips. "It's for my deceased brother." Not knowing how to comfort her, Kian awkwardly said his condolences. She suddenly shoved the bouquet into Kian's arms. "That was our dog," she said, her eyes twinkling. "His name was Brother because as a child I was always envious of neighbors who had older brothers." She then lightened the mood, sharing amusing stories from her past. Coincidentally, they were both heading to the same hospital. This series of coincidences made Kian marvel at the wonders of fate. They talked for a long time, and when they parted ways, they exchanged numbers. On the way back to Kian's car, Kian stared cheerfully into the distance. The people in Kian's memories had long since faded. Kian's road ahead is still long. Sunshine, flowers, and love. You should never try to define anything. They simply create the exciting moments when everything uniquely intertwines.